The story of Sparta has been one that sounds really cool every time we hear it. What most of us know about Sparta is about King Leonidas and his battle with the 300. Actually, that battle was not fought with 300 soldiers, it was fought with 7,000 soldiers against an army of over 1,000,000. Did you know that during this battle, the king was 60 years old? There is more to Sparta. Once Philip II of Macedon wanted to conquer Sparta. He sent a warning to the Spartans that read, "If I win this war, you will be slaves forever." The Spartans replied with just one word, "if." Their boldness paid off and Philip II left Sparta alone. Here are some more such interesting facts about Sparta. Number 1. Babies in Sparta would be bathed in wine instead of water when they were born. Then they were taken to the council of elders to judge their fitness. Their cries were frequently ignored and they were commanded not to fear anything. As soon as a baby was born, the mother would bathe the baby in wine to see how strong it was. If the baby survived, the council of elders in Sparta would examine the child for any physical defects. The child's father would bring the baby to them and they would declare if the child was fit or not. If the council found the child to be unfit, the baby would be abandoned and left to either die or to be rescued by strangers. Any kind of weakness was not tolerated in ancient Sparta. Number 2. Schools in ancient Sparta underfed boys to force them to steal food. If caught, they were punished severely. This was done to toughen them up and prepare them for going days without food during battles. These boys who did not answer questions wittily or bravely were also punished. From the day a Spartan child was born, their military training began. They were trained to survive in starvation. They were underfed and forced to steal food. When they stole, they were punished. Special punishment were also imparted when the boys did not answer the questions wittily and bravely. Apart from this, they also learned reading, writing and other things. Number 3. To demonstrate to the youth how not to act and to give a lesson of self-control, the Spartans would force their slaves to get drunk on wine and make a fool of themselves in public. Sparta needed their youth to be epitomes of self-control and self-discipline. And to do this, they made them learn through examples. The Spartans would make the slaves get drunk on wine on purpose and then show their young boys how the slaves behaved foolishly. The youth were told that they should never act the way the slaves did. At an early age of 20, Spartan youth became soldiers and served in the army until they were 60. These boys were taught to fight in a formation where coordination and discipline were extremely necessary. Number 4. At the height of its power in 479 BCE, the number of slaves in Sparta was 7 times the number of its free citizens. Some 250 years later, 6,000 slaves earned enough wealth to buy their own freedom. We have heard of the Spartans, but we have not heard much about the others who lived among them. The slaves of Sparta did everything that was too low a task for a Spartan. Per every free citizen of Sparta, there were 7 slaves. The Spartans were largely dependent on their slaves. The slaves were not exactly poor even though they did not have voting rights. They could retain 50% of the fruits of their labor, get married and were allowed to practice religion rites. They could have their own land and earn enough to make themselves rich. Some 6,000 slaves collected enough wealth to buy their freedom in 227 BCE. Number 7. In ancient Sparta, elections were decided not by voting but by shouting. The candidate for whom the shouting was the loudest won. The members of the council were elected by voting, but unlike how voting happened today, in Sparta, voting happened by shouting. The teller would begin shouting out a number without knowing which candidate it belonged to. The candidate for whom the shouting was the loudest would win and get elected. Aristotle called this practice of voting as childish. The practice of voting by shouting also applied to other yes or no decisions, like a time when a decision about going to war was to made, people would scream yes or no. Number 6. Spartans discouraged the hoarding of wealth. This is why they used long and heavy iron rods as currency, which would sometimes need to be carried by oxen. The founder of Sparta introduced iron bars as currency. This was known as iron currency, which was used in other parts of ancient Greece too. The use of such currency was to develop a strong Spartan character and discourage the hoarding of wealth. Due to its weight, it must have discouraged the Spartans to further their financial ambitions. It was a way to not let greed create a weak Spartan society. When iron currency was used, it was the sole currency. Number 7. The Spartans are credited to be the first recorded users of chemical warfare in the Peloponnesian War. They made use of poisonous gas to weaken the Athenians. The earliest recorded use of gas in warfare was during the 5th century BCE. This war was fought between Athens and Sparta in 3 phases. The Spartans had plans to besiege an Athenian city, and they got innovative. They placed a lightened mixture of wood, sulfur, and pitch, which produced a poisonous smoke to incapacitate the Athenians. This was done so that when the Spartans attacked, the ability of the Athenians to resist the attack would have been drastically decreased. Sparta ultimately won the war and replaced the Athenians' empire with the Spartan one. That's all for today. I hope you liked the video. If you did, then do give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel.